Welcome to Compromising Positions. I'm Leanne Potter, cyber anthropologist and head of security operations for a major retailer.
And I'm Jeff Watkins, a cybersecurity enthusiast and CTO for a major tech consultancy. Together, we're the tech podcast that asks non-cybersecurity professionals what we in the industry can do to make their lives easier.
And help make our organizations more prepared to face ever-changing human-centric cyber threats. In this episode, we're joined by Melina Palmer, again, a renowned keynote speaker in behavioural economics and the CEO of Brainy business, as well as hosting one of the best podcasts on the subject for practical application of behavioural economics.
In this episode, we're going to discuss the art of influencing both up and down and how to tailor your cybersecurity message to different audiences.
Melina teaches us in this episode it's not all about the cookie. That is, it's not just about the product or cybersecurity awareness and the controls themselves, but how we frame this information and communicate change.
With her expertise in behavioural economics, Melina shows us how to make change easier, reduce decision fatigue, and increase social capital through understanding and compromise. So if you're interested in improving your cybersecurity awareness and making positive changes in your daily routines, you're in the right place.
Do check out part 1 yet if you've not done so already, but for now, enjoy our second conversation with Melina. As we open this episode, Jeff asks how cybersecurity teams can get buy-in from the execs. So sit back and see what Melina thinks we can do on this very hot topic. Enjoy!
There's another common complaint made by security teams is that the business doesn't prioritize security, although they don't get a seat at the very top table. I guess it's the other side of influence now, influencing up. Like, what factors influence people's decisions about whether or not to prioritize things like security? And how can we make more convincing, I guess, salesmen when we're actually arguing our case?
Yeah, with it, good news, I guess. It's the same sort of stuff. So if the people so understanding and having empathy for who you're looking to be communicating with is critical, whether it's your boss, your boss's boss, your people on the teams that you're communicating to, people in your team, or you're looking at customers or whatever it is. And not everyone needs to hear the same message. Not everyone cares about the same stuff. And so this is one of those areas where, from looping back around from earlier on, of where marketing and especially PR kind of get a bad rap of the you're hyping and spin, right? Like, talk about how you're spinning it for different people. But like, if we take a step back and say, like, the CEO cares about something different than the person that you need to actually implement what you're talking to across the organization, which is different to what someone in your department cares about, then is different than what someone on the legal team cares about. And if you're by spin, you mean that I'm being thoughtful about the person I'm talking to and giving them the details that are most important to them to make a decision that they care about. And I have answers in case they have questions about anything else, in which case I can respond to those appropriately. And I'm taking care of and considering everyone's opinion and what they need in all of what I'm doing. Like, I guess, I'm a spin doctor, as they say, right? Like, that's not a bad thing. It's good to be thoughtful and communicate. And so when you think about the CEO, right? The CEO and the rest of the executive team probably care about them not having a breach, right? Having people actually apply what they're told to be doing and understand, caring enough that they're meeting those standards and requirements. And they've got some ratio they're looking at. They've got a number that they care about. If you understand what they're looking at and why this matters to them, and you can communicate clearly as to how your role and what you could be doing to then implement this across the organization in some other ways, maybe I know you're also looking at this, and I was considering this from a securities perspective. And actually, if we would have been part of the meeting, there's opportunity to where we could have built this in earlier on. It would save money and it would have been a more efficient use of time. And it's something that can help with that buy-in earlier on. And for this upcoming project, I was looking at it, and we could save 100 hours if we are just in the room in this front end time. And that's however many thousands or tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars if security is part of this initial conversation to help build this out in a stronger way. You're communicating what they care about in a way that's also what you care about. And when you can think about the broader organization and its needs, and not just, well, I did my job and you do your job. No one gets promoted with, well, there are people that get promoted with that mentality, but it's really hard to make a case to be at those tables if you have the not my problem mentality. right? That is just not going to be very helpful in getting that spot. But when you can show whatever your role is, that you see the bigger picture and you care about people across the organization, not just in the seat that you are in, and that you can compromise and give and take and have a good conversation with people and be suggesting bigger picture items and take suggestions as well. That's what's really needed at those C-level or any, throughout the organization. And so demonstrating it before you have the spot is really key to people seeing, oh yeah, this is going to work. And sometimes people promote people and make an exception and say, you know what, we're going to go ahead and do this because Jeff is just awesome. I love having him in the room. He has such great ideas. We want him to be there. And so we'll just go ahead and try it out. Right. And so maybe they're giving you a chance, and that's okay because it can, help lift as you climb.
Love that. And yeah, that's what Jeff hears all the time.
I believe it.
Awesome. Now, this is something I do know about, but for the benefit of our listeners, you have a whole series called It's Not About the Cookie. Can you explain what that is and how we can use that in security? I think we can, but let's see how you've kind of put a spin on it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So It's Not About the Cookie framework. I use the same one for change management as I use for pricing. And while I don't know exactly when this episode will air, but the third book is actually coming out very soon, scheduled for January, and it is called The Truth About Pricing. So it'll have lots of cookie related references in it. So in this case, it really is built first on framing, but in this, how we present information makes a big difference. And knowing that, it's not about the cookie, it's not about the change, it's not about the thing you're presenting, and all these other aspects matter, and how you present the information, like whether people buy something or not isn't really about price. That's spoiler alert, the truth about pricing is it's not about price in the same way it's not about the change or whatever it is. So if you imagine we're walking down the street, we're having a great conversation and we're really, engrossed in whatever we're talking about, but then all of a sudden there's this delicious scent that comes wafting down the street and we go, oh, ooh, right. We're still talking, but we're really distracted now trying to find the source, and it's sweet and salty, a little hint of salt in there, chocolate and brown sugar. And you go, oh, those are chocolate chip cookies baking. I can smell them. I'm so excited. So we're distracted. We're trying to find them, and we get there and we see that there's a line of people that we quickly find ourselves in, and they give a free sample and say, today only, buy 3, get 1 free. And before you know it, we both leave that store with eating a cookie and, a bag with an undisclosed amount in hand for later. So that's one scenario. If we take our step back, same street, same conversation, we're walking, we're talking. Someone comes up and shoves a flyer in your face and says, hey, today only, I've got these cookies. And, if you buy 4, you only have to pay for 3 of them. I've got samples. You go, ugh, like that guy, like how rude. Like, of course we don't want those. I'll never buy from them. Now we're talking about bad sales experiences, and we see the store and it has a line of people that we are pitying because we have better standards than they do. Would definitely never buy from them. We smell the cookies and use that as a trigger to go find their name and write Yelp reviews about their terrible sales tactics and that we would never buy from them. If we notice, could have been the exact same cookies in both scenarios. We didn't talk about how expensive they were, right? The first cookies we were very likely buying. Let's say they were $2 a cookie, whatever. In the other case, they could have been 50 cents a cookie or whatever. And we definitely were looking to buy one and really not going to get the other. And it doesn't matter how good they are objectively or whatever, right? So it's not about the cookie. It's not about the price. It's not about what you're presenting and that information. You can say it in a different way. And in one way, it just feels terrible. And the other way, it feels really good and something that we're excited about. So an example that I like to give that's in What Your Employees Need and Can't Tell You is of a boss that I had at one point. And I had only been at this company for a few months. I wasn't at my 90-day probation sort of deal yet. And I got an email at 10 a.m. on a Thursday. And it said, we need to talk, be in my office at 2. Which
Great. Love those emails. They're brilliant. That's it. Nothing else. That's all it said.
Yeah, that was it. That's all it said. And I obviously went about the rest. I thought, wonder what that is. And then spent the rest of my day not thinking about it. No, of course not. I was freaking out and looking at every project I'd been working on and every interaction that I'd had and texting people, reaching out to my husband and friends like, oh my gosh, what's happening? I'm stress eating,
Gonna have to
for
find
4
another
hours.
job.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm scrolling, looking for the want ads or whatever. And the classifieds, I guess it is back in the day, right? From when that would have been. So having to totally stressed, freaking out, wasting 4 hours of time, but I'm like feeling like I'm armed and ready for what's coming in to defend myself at 2:00. So that time comes, she gestures for me to come sit in her office, and I do. And she says, I'm going to be out tomorrow, and I wanted to let you know that I'm putting you as my contact in my out of office responder. So you might get some emails while I'm gone.
Oh. Your adrenaline must have just been through the roof, and then just like, where does all that energy go once that comes through?
Yeah, I don't remember anything else we talked about in that meeting, let me tell you.
Yeah, wow.
But yeah, so in this case, let's imagine that she was going to be presenting me some sort of change, even something she thought was good, right? You're going to be given this project or this happening. Like, am I, or, heaven forbid, I have to move my desk to another part of the office or something, right? Like, am I possibly ready to hear this and in a good mind space for anything that's coming my way in this moment? Or is my mind totally overloaded with, fight or flight chemicals, adrenaline? I'm like, that anything that comes up, I am ready to battle against. And so let's say it was, a change that was being presented that she thought was a really good thing that I should be excited about. The way that one email was sent impacted everything that happened after it. And when I was writing about this for my book 10 years later, I felt my blood pressure, like my heart beating faster. I was feeling the stress, reliving it in such a long time. I came to learn, this was just how this person communicated, and she did this all the time. And there was a very specific meeting on Thursday mornings that this would happen. And it was like a quick send. And this is very much the piece of like, well, that's not on me. It's your job to know that I'm a good, thoughtful person. And, I don't mean that when I give you this short communication, right? To our employees, to other people on other teams, like they should know that that's not what I meant, right? They don't know that. And even if they try to consciously convince themselves that you're probably not being a jerk or there's not something happening, there's a lot of like buzzing that you're creating in someone's brain that's just not necessary. And it makes it so they don't have space to consider implementing whatever change it is that you are presenting to them. So like, imagine now if her email had said, we'll be kind, we'll say 2 minutes of extra thoughtfulness here because it shouldn't have taken that long to send an email that says, hey, I'm going to be out tomorrow. Do you have time at 2:00 to talk about it? Yep.
Yeah.
Like, see you then. Like, whatever, right? Like, nothing. I lost hours of productive time, not just the 4 hours leading up to in between the email and the meeting, but after that. And every piece of communication, I'm constantly on edge for her saving, let's say, 2 minutes. So that thoughtful piece of how we present the information has a huge impact of whether someone wants to buy in or not, that it's not about the cookie framework. You have a lot of control and power to change. If you have people that like are battling you all the time, or it feels like you're not making the headway, taking a moment to stop and say, how am I responsible in making change easier for other people? What can I do to make this better for other people? How might I communicate this in a different way? Like, how can I look at this from their perspective and empathize and all this? It's really not that hard. And implementing the little bit of extra thoughtfulness up front can have a huge win of you're not having to be fighting fires and doing all these other things for ages because of that one bad email.
Change is quite difficult for some people anyway, and I think making it harder for all concerned is something I always try to consider when I'm writing communiques. I think the worst email I ever got was on Friday afternoon about 4 p.m. We need to chat on Monday.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Weekend ruined. Ruined.
The worst message in all of business because it's not really stealing much of my productivity, but it sure did steal my weekend.
Yeah.
I actually read in a management book, and it immediately struck me as like, I don't think that's right. There was a management book, and it was like, always deliver bad news on a Friday. It's like, what? So they can just ruin their weekend? Things like, oh no, well, because you want them productive for the rest of the week. Don't do it on the Monday. And I was like, well, that's not very human centric, is it?
Right.
Just,
right. Yeah. Best. Who's this best for? Right. This is where we want to be.
Feels Machiavellian.
Yeah.
Do you have any other tips for making change easier for all concerned?
Oh, I have so many tips. So one, not to, I guess, point to my own stuff, but what your employees need and can't tell you really is about this. And it's a whole book about it. So I have, like I said, lots of insights on things that you can do here. I would say the biggest thing to think about is knowing that our brains are built on predictability and habit of what we've always done. So just to think a little bit about how much is done subconsciously is to take a moment and think about how many decisions you think you make on an average day, and or how many decisions you can remember making. Like, how many decisions did you make yesterday, if you think about that? So for our listener that maybe is taking a moment to think about how many decisions they think they make, the research shows that we all make 35,000 decisions every day. And that's not just like breathe in, breathe out. These are like real, remotely conscious choices that people are making all day long. And I always like to then ask, like, how many decisions do you remember making yesterday? And like when I'm doing a presentation, someone will say 2 or 5, right? Like, we don't remember a lot of them because they're done by that subconscious processing using habits and predictability. So our brains are wired to make decisions based on what has worked well in the past, not what is necessarily best for the future. And they like predictability. And so we also live in this space of micro moments and micro decisions. And so when we think about change at work, we tend to think that the only things that count are really big changes, like a merger, or a CEO is retiring, or we're doing a rebrand, something that needs a project management team. And, things like communicate to the team is like one checkbox on a very long to-do list. But really, we're in a constant state of change all the time. And I argue that every interaction is one of change. You're either in the wake of changes that have already happened, you're in the midst of communicating about a change right now, or you're prepping for changes that are yet to come that you have to be communicating with and thoughtful about all the time. And it's like this big mass of ripples from all these different changes that you want to be thinking about. And so even something as simple as where people set their cup on their desk is a habit, and where you put your keys and where your code is and how you log into the computer every day and remembering your password and the route you take to work. These are all based on habit that subconscious brain is able to do for us, and they don't take up a lot of cognitive conscious processing. When we make a lot of little changes, it's not like we tend to say like, well, those don't matter. That's not that big of a deal, but they really are as far as the brain is concerned. And if you're bogging down the brain with a bunch of little changes that aren't that important and then asking someone to do this other big thing, I just don't have the bandwidth for it. And so when you look at a big change that's coming up, you do have a conversion project or something that's going to be happening. That's not the time to say, well, we're already, so people tend to say, well, we're already doing this. We might as well go ahead and have everybody also change to this new system, and they should move their desks, and they're going to do this other thing, and we'll do these all at the same time, and we'll just get it all out of the way. So while some of those things, it might be good to bundle them together. In general, if you're making unnecessary changes and trying to layer them in, or, worse, saying we'll do this little thing the week before we need them to do the really important thing, don't do that. That's not going to help you when you're looking at presenting change. And also, if you are someone who, when you're needing someone to do something, you have important work, you're doing like a one-on-one, or you're meeting with somebody, and say, I'm going to get all this other stuff out of my head, take a bunch of notes, like, this is all the stuff I've been meaning to tell you for a week, go do this and look this up and go talk to this person. And I want you to do this and I need you to do that. And I want this and 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 this for like 40 minutes. And then you say, okay, good. Now that all that's out of the way, let's do some real deep work. And I want you to think about this change that's coming. They're super not ready for that because you set them up really to fail in this way. And that approach was helpful for you to be ready to have your brain opened up and ready for the meeting, it really made it much worse for them. Right. So if you want to be thoughtful about the other person and the one thing you want them to do out of that meeting, and if the most important thing is for them to be open to this change that's coming, maybe that like brain dump that you wanted to do to help you is actually going to be a hindrance for them. You want to save that, be a little bit more thoughtful, summarize that in an email that they're going to get later, or some other tasks that you're able to make it so that's easier for them. Again, being more thoughtful to what other people need in the moment and the small micro changes of what you're needing. If you only get one thing out of each interaction, what matters the most, and prioritizing that goes a long way to helping it so every change is easier.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
I think my mind is officially blown now.
You're welcome.
There's been so many times in your examples where I've just had like this cold sweat, and because we've all been there, we've all had these emails, we've all had these meetings where there's just like information overload and things like that. And
I've done it myself.
Yeah, and
well, now you know not to.
Exactly.
And definitely no, like I'm sure I have employees from the past that could say like, Melina, you've done that to me. Like, yes, I've done this in my past as well. I've been, but then you're writing the book on it and you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that. And so it's like helping other people too. I apologize to any employees or team people where I've done that in the past, but try not to do that anymore.
Yeah. Do as I say, not as I do.
I'm hopeful I don't do it now. Now that I've written the book on it, I have some thoughtfulness.
I should hope so.
In my earlier years, before going through all the research and studies, I know I definitely did everything I say not to do in some version or another. Now I've learned it from having had mistakes that I've made and like the meeting that didn't go well. But that's a learning thing, right? But you can go back and you can say, something went wrong here. Like what? And instead of saying, like, why did they react that way? Anytime that you can say, what might I have done differently? Like, what did I say? What did I do that that contributed to this? Like, how did I do something here? And what can I learn for the future? Anytime you look to you, like, again, I'm not saying that I've never done any of these things. That's silly. But you want to be looking anytime that something doesn't quite go the way you thought it was going to, and it didn't go your way, is always an opportunity to learn and to see how you can adjust into the future. And just kind of looking to be a better human all the way around, I think is always a positive.
And on that note, be a better human all the way around. Thank you so much. It's about 1,000,001 questions I'd love to continue to ask you, but being respectful of your time, and you have been very generous with it. Listeners, you had a big milestone recently, 1 million downloads.
Yes.
This woman knows her stuff.
Whoa.
It's brilliant. So
Yay.
Please do go seek out her podcast. There will be links in the description. But in the meantime, what would you like to plug? You've got another book coming out. You've got 2 other books coming out. Tell us more. Tell us everything.
Oh, of course. Well, you can always go find me at thebrainybusiness.com, and you can find information about all the books and the podcast and connect with me there. You can also find me across the socials as The Brainy Biz, B-I-Z, and just Melina Palmer on LinkedIn.
Absolutely brilliant.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Not just in cybersecurity, but I think in business in general, we're all guilty in introducing too much cognitive overload. That is too much information in a short space of time, and expecting people to act in a way we either expect them to or want them to. But none of us like being on the receiving end of being overwhelmed. So I have to ask, why do we think it's okay to do it to others?
I wonder if some of it's because of the structure of the post-COVID workplace. We've touched upon in other episodes about time box interactions. If you think you're only going to get one chance a week or a month or whatever it is to speak to that person, you're going to save up all the information and dump it on them. For you, it's relieving because you're getting loads off your chest. But for the person on the receiving end,
it's a lot to take in. And if we apply that to our cybersecurity message, how impactful can it possibly be if we have multiple messages going out at once without giving people, 1, the time to take it in, or 2, making time to adjust or even break those habits that might lead to insecure behaviour? And
that's where Melina's It's Not About the Cookie example comes in. There are different ways you can present your message. One that creates a pleasant interaction that leaves people wanting more, and the other
that that leads to avoidance and dangerous workarounds. We've definitely seen that about.
Right. And if you do want to start putting what Melina has discussed into practice, go to the links in the show notes. And if you like the show, please do leave us a review and share on LinkedIn or in your teams. It really helps us spread the word and get high quality guests like Melina on future episodes.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. See you next time. Keep secure and don't forget to ask yourself, am I in a compromising position here?